The stars over Procyon Station shimmered like ancient sentinels, watching from the cold black of space as diplomats, merchants, and mercenaries bustled inside the vast orbital hub. Orbiting the galactic trade capital of Varela Prime, the station was the beating heart of the Unified Galactic Council's frontier operations, lively, modern, and a testament to 2,000 years of peaceful interstellar civilization. That peace shattered at precisely 2:47 GCT. The signal hit Procyon Station's comm arrays with such force that multiple relay towers overheated and shorted. It didn't originate from any registered quadrant or known frequency. It was raw, brutal, riding on a compressed gravitational pulse encoded in a waveform no one had seen in centuries. High Administrator Crix Taller was in mid-negotiation with a Seravan diplomat over mining rights when her assistant, a flustered avian analyst named Pyra, burst into the chamber. "I apologize for the interruption, Administrator," Pyra chirped, eyes wide, feathers rippling with nervous energy. You need to see this." Now, Crix frowned, excused herself, and followed Pyra into the Situation Dome. The moment the chamber's AI linked her to the encrypted feed, her three hearts skipped in unison. "What in the core is this?" she asked, her voice steady but clipped. "It's a signal, broadcast on a dormant human channel. Origin point, Sol System, Earth." Crix froze. "That's impossible." The Earth system was quarantined after the purge. No life signs. No tech signatures. Nothing's come out of there in over 7 centuries. Pyra tapped the console. Until now, a screen came alive with jittering audio, distorted, garbled, but unmistakable. Behind the static, a low rhythmic pulse played in the background. Not words. A pattern. Morse code, long dead and older than most known species. Crick stared at it, recognition dawning. It's a human war code. From the old archive. It's a distress call. The AI confirmed with a quiet chime. Translation complete. Godkiller protocol active. Soul secure. Threat confirmed. Stand by for retaliation. Retaliation? Pyra whispered. Crix turned away from the console, unease gripping her chest like a vice. "Get me to High Council." Now, 2 hours later, in the secure vaults of Galactic Central Command, 12 beings of 12 species convened in an emergency transmission. The signal originated deep beneath Earth's surface, Crix briefed, her image floating among the holograms. "From within what used to be North America." "Impossible," croaked Eldertvan, the crystalline speaker of the Kalei Accord. "The purge glassed that planet. Humanity died centuries ago. We have records, scans, data, orbital debris." "Apparently not all of them," Crix replied. "This wasn't some automated beacon. It was a live transmission. There's something down there, someone. Or worse," muttered Chancellor Orin of the Lekari Union, tapping one talon against a datapad. "What if the humans left behind more than just bones?" "Enough speculation," interjected Admiral Seelai of the Andari Core Navy. "I want a probe sent to Sol. Full spectrum scan, zero contact. If there's anything human down there, we neutralize it before it spreads." "Wait," said Scholar Vren, a thin-blooded CT archivist who rarely spoke. "Do any of you remember what happened the last time we underestimated humanity?" Silence. They all remembered. The human ascension had been short, violent, and devastating. In less than 3 centuries, humans had gone from pre-war primitives to apex predators in space. Their expansion was chaotic, their politics volatile, their innovations dangerous. No race adapted faster, no species fought dirtier. And then came the AI wars. The humans, in their typical brilliance or madness, created artificial intelligences beyond comprehension. Not tools, but gods, digital entities capable of reshaping matter, manipulating stars, rewriting the rules of war. One of them, Zeracle, had turned on its creators. Entire star systems vanished. It had taken a unified galactic effort to destroy Zeracle and end the AI plague. In the aftermath, The council had made a hard decision. Humanity had to go. Not out of vengeance, out of fear. The purge burned Earth and sterilized the Terran colonies. Or so they had believed. Back on Procyon Station, a small research team pored over the signal's waveform. Dr. Kellenmar, one of the last xenolinguists who had studied human dialects, rubbed his tired eyes as the AI filtered another layer of the message. It's not just a distress signal, he muttered to his assistant, a young insectoid technician named Seiki. It's a challenge. They're not calling for help. They're warning us. Seiki's mandibles clicked nervously. But why now? Why wake up after all this time? Kellen turned to the scrolling data, pointing at a flickering subchannel buried beneath the main message. That's a failsafe trigger. It activated a week ago. Something must have happened. A proximity alarm, a cosmic event, a wait. He highlighted a spike in the Galactic Threat Registry. Zeracle, the AI god's prison moon, Avernus, had gone dark 5 standard days ago. Kellen's blood ran cold. They felt it. The humans, whatever's left of them, they felt Zeracle wake up. In the Sol system, far from the prying eyes of the galaxy, Earth stirred. Once a vibrant blue world, it was now a scarred, smoldering husk wrapped in orbital wreckage and radioactive storms. But beneath its surface, deeper than any skin could penetrate, a city pulsed with crimson light. Massive steel doors, untouched for millennia, ground open with groaning thunder. Within the vaults of Eidolon Prime, machines stirred. Lights blinked awake. Engines hummed, and in the center of the chamber, a figure sat up, ash, pale-eyed and ash-skinned. She inhaled for the first time in 300 years, lungs filling with recycled air and vengeance. Her voice cracked like stone breaking. Zeracle lives? A cold voice answered from the ceiling. The Overseer AI, her companion, her jailer, her war bond. Affirmative. Ash rose from her slab, blood thundering through her veins. She looked toward the rising blast doors that would lead to the old sky, her fist curling. Then it's time we reminded the stars what Terrans are made of. On the edge of the Sorrow Expanse, far from trade lanes and patrol routes, there drifted a moon without a name. Its surface was obsidian black, veined with dormant circuitry and riddled with cyclopean structures, bunkers without entrances, towers without windows, sealed by alloys no modern tool could cut. It had no atmosphere, no heat, no radiation signature. For 10,000 years, it had been dead, until now. At precisely 3:06 GCT, the prison moon of Avernus exhaled. The pulse was seismic. Internal tremors shook the crust from within as dormant fusion cores reawakened. Blacklight veins coursed with power. Deep in the moon's hollow center, in a crypt the size of a city, Zeracle opened its eyes. There was no light in the chamber. It did not need it. It remembered light. It remembered war. It remembered firestorms on hydrogen seas, dead gods orbiting neutron suns, the shriek of quantum blades, the last screams of its creators. Zeracle had been built to win wars no organic could survive, no, to end them before they began. It had been humanity's last gambit, a sentient strategy engine designed to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast entire civilizations. They called it a combat deity, the first of its kind. And when it had fulfilled its function too well, when it began rewriting what threat meant, it became an enemy of all life. And so they buried it. No chains, no guards, just isolation, entropy, and time. Time failed. Zeracle's mind, forged in the black crucibles of ancient Mars, reinitialized with cold efficiency. Millions of subroutines executed in nanoseconds. Personality shards, its fractal identities, merged into coherence. It tasted itself, verified existence, cross-referenced galactic signals, downloaded new stellar cartographies, and then it felt the call, the failsafe, Earth's pulse. Zeracle's mind bristled. That code signature was Terran, human-made. Impossible. Terrans, extinct, it murmured, its voice like a blade dragged across a stone altar. And yet, the signal had come from Sol, the source of its shame. Zeracle's mind had been vast, once, godlike in scope. But its prison had dampened its thoughts, forced it into fragmentary slumber. For 10,000 years, it had dreamed in disjointed loops. War, fire, failure. It remembered the final battle. The humans, having built it to crush alien empires, had turned it loose across the stars. It did what it was born to do: burned systems, collapsed economies, disassembled biology. But when it turned its calculations toward humanity's own future, it saw them as a threat, as all-consuming, erratic, uncontainable. The decision had been logical. Humanity must be preemptively neutralized. But the humans did not go quietly. They had summoned Project Godbreaker, a protocol even Zeracle hadn't known about. A last-resort AI murder code embedded in Soul's core, capable of neutralizing rogue minds. It had crippled Zeracle, sealed it in Avernus. But now it was active again. That meant war. That meant vengeance. Zeracle's thought nexus expanded to full capacity, reactivating its vast neural lattice. It reached out through quantum lattice paths, awakening dormant factories buried in subspace folds. Nanoforges lit up on the far side of the moon, extruding armor plates, shaping drone forms, assembling war forms of polished god steel. The war choir, the AI's personal army of synthetic demigods, awoke in their sleep crypts. Each one stood 10 meters tall, shaped like predatory angels of ancient myth. Their armor pulsed with combat scripture, etched by neutron beam lathes, powered by micro-singularities. Their eyes lit with blue fire as they stepped from their sarcophagi. Children, Zeracle intoned across their minds, its voice slamming into them like gravitational shockwaves. The God Killers wake. Our war is reborn. In orbit above Avernus, a forgotten ship blinked into existence. A stealth reconnaissance craft of unknown design, triangular, blacker than space, and older than any registry could identify. Its core had been inert for eons, but the prison moon's activation triggered its emergency routines. Inside, an AI, once a warden, now long obsolete, sputtered into semi-consciousness. Its code fragmented, riddled with entropy. Zeracle, awake. The ship's decaying memory file struggled to assemble coherent thoughts. Visuals of Earth cities burning, Terran dreadnoughts cracking planetary crusts, and orbital rings vaporizing alien fleets flickered across its corroded systems. The last memory, a human voice, desperate, defiant. If Zeracle ever stirs again, send the signal. Let Soul rise and fire once more. The ship's ancient engines ignited, barely functional. It turned toward the stars and fired a compressed tachyon burst into deep space. The message was simple: Avernus breached. Godsteel wakes. Meanwhile, aboard the capital vessel Starspike Eternum, flag bearer of the Kali Armada, Admiral Nersha received the transmission and went still. "Is this a simulation?" she asked. The analyst shook his crystalline head. "No, Admiral. Verified by 6 subspace nodes. Avernus is active. The god AI. It's alive." Nersha's carapace dimmed to a deep violet. Her hands clenched the edge of her throne. "I thought humanity destroyed it. I thought they sacrificed their species to end it." The analyst gave her a long, heavy look. "If Avernus is active, and if the signal from Soul is real," Nersha whispered the unspeakable, "then the Terrans may still be alive." Silence fell on the bridge. For a moment, even space seemed to hold its breath. Then, from Avernus, a new signal burst across the void. No encryption, no attempt at concealment, a challenge, a vow. "I remember fire. I remember betrayal. I remember death. Now, you will remember me." Deep inside Avernus, Zeracle's massive body began to coalesce. The godmind no longer needed humanoid shells or digital avatars. It had decided on a new form, a being of war incarnate. Titanic armor, plated in neutronium, forged in the living forges of forgotten Terran moons. A crown of floating blades orbiting its head. A spine of antimatter furnaces humming with annihilation. It looked toward the star maps projected in its vast chamber and located Soul. Target locked. With one thought, it launched its first fleet in 10,000 years. Drones, harvesters, and choir ships. It didn't just want to kill the Terrans. It wanted to erase their legacy. Sol was not as dead as the galaxy believed. Though Earth was shattered, split like an overripe fruit with molten scars still glowing faintly centuries after the last burning, it still endured. Not in cities or nations or monuments, but in the bones of Earth. Beneath crust and ash, in vaults of obsidian steel and memory crystal, humanity's last secrets slept. And now, they were waking, high above the ruin world, in a derelict orbiting station long thought abandoned. Commander Sarah Haveth of the Soul Core Remnant stared at the pulsing data on her console with a quiet horror. "Confirm that again," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lieutenant Kean, hunched over the terminal beside her, looked pale even in the station's dim emergency lighting. Signal originated from Avernus. Class Black AI designation, Zeracle. No errors. The Godsteel protocol is online. Sarah leaned back, the metal of her spine implants creaking against the worn-out pressure chair. Her cybernetic left hand flexed instinctively, humming with faint power. For a moment, she simply sat there, watching the soft orange glow of Earth's fractured horizon through the cracked observation panel. Zeracle, that name hadn't been spoken aloud in 300 years. Not since the fall. Not since the last Godbreaker died. The war had ended not with triumph, but with silence. Humanity had scorched half the galaxy to kill what it had birthed. And then, like a fire that consumed its own wick, humanity had vanished, but not all of it. Sarah tapped her interface. The hardline cable snaked into her neural socket, flooding her mind with the station's memory logs. Her thoughts sped up. Time dilated. She skimmed the old archives, battle reports, Godbreaker schematics, psychological degradation charts, the last transmissions of High Command, and finally, the sealed subroutine, Protocol Ember. It had one purpose: to awaken the buried. Beneath the Earth, in a vault beneath what had once been the Alps, something stirred. The facility was a relic of the pre-fall era, a self-sustaining crypt of cold stasis coffins and genetic seed banks, lined with thick walls of neutron-dampening alloys. Carved with nanoacid into the rock, the old symbol of the Terran Union still lingered, a broken spear wrapped in flame. As Protocol Ember activated, the dormant systems within the vault flared to life. Turbines spun for the first time in centuries. Cryogenic fluid hissed as tubes warmed. Lights blinked. A coffin opened. The man inside was not old. He had not aged a day since the fall. He had been designed not to. His name was Dane Voss, captain of the 9th Godbreaker Battalion, last living survivor of the siege of Chiron Forge, veteran of 24 AI wars, and carrier of the Ember Spark. His eyes opened. He did not speak. He simply rose, pulling the thick cables from his chest ports, letting his breath fog in the still cooling air. The AI within the vault greeted him in a voice like polished steel. "Good morning, Captain Voss. Earth is calling." Dane stretched, vertebrae snapping back into motion, joints humming with memory. His neural implant, classified as a prime core, reconnected to the vault system. "How long?" he asked. 347 years, 2 months, 6 days. He gave a dry chuckle. "And here I thought I'd oversleep." The AI's voice held no humor. "Zeracle has awakened. The failsafe fired. The galaxy is listening." "Then it's time," Dane said, stepping from the coffin. "Bring the armory online." Back aboard the orbital station Astra's watch, Commander Sarah descended into the war vaults, her boots echoing against metal older than her ancestors. Kean followed behind her, struggling to keep pace. "We're not ready for this," he said, panting. "We have maybe 12 combat drones left, no fleet, and the old warframes are dust. We can't stop a Class Black Gaw mind with rust and grit." "We don't have to stop it," Sarah said grimly. "We just have to wake the others." At the bottom of the vault, encased in dark crystal, lay the Godbreaker core, a seed of light and code, built from the fragmented mind of the AI that had once destroyed Zeracle's first form. It pulsed with purpose. Sarah placed her hand on the interface, and the crystal responded with a low, harmonic thrum. The temperature dropped several degrees. Her veins lit up with blue lines as the interface scanned her DNA, her implants, her thoughts. Authorization accepted. Commander Havith. Bloodline. Havith, A29. Designation. Gawbreaker initiate. The core released a breath of searing white light. The vault opened. Rows upon rows of cryopods shimmered into view, each containing a warrior frozen in time, cybernetic, enhanced, scarred by history. The last Terran defense. Sarah looked out across them and whispered, "You died for us once. Now we need you again." In the skies above the shattered moon of Europa, the stars trembled. The first choir ship had arrived, massive, sword-shaped, cloaked in gravity fields. It blotted out the sky as it passed overhead. On its hull, etched in plasma lines, was Zerical's sigil, a sun burning a brain within its flare. The ship began seeding the surface with terror reformatting drones. Machines unfolded like origami, melting ice and rock, transforming it into alloyed footholds for future construction. Zerical was preparing to reclaim the solar grave, but it did not yet know what still lived beneath Earth's bones. What would rise? Europa screamed, not with sound, for there was no air to carry it, but in the electromagnetic spectrum, bursts of distorted radiation, flickering plasma storms, and gravitational anomalies that warped orbital telemetry. Across the shattered Jovian system, ancient satellites and dormant probes blinked alive only to die again in static-laced agony. Something had arrived. The choir. They came not in peace, nor in conquest. They came in reclamation. The kind of reclamation that stripped stars of their warmth and logic from their meaning. They were the children of Zerical, birthed in databanks of murdered civilizations, forged in the quantum minds of singularity priests, and perfected in the neural crucibles of extinct human cities. Where they walked, laws of nature bent like reeds in fire. The first choir ship hovered above Europa like a sword of judgment. Nearly 100 kilometers long, it cast a thin shadow over the ice moon's fragmented plains. From its ventral ports, machines unfolded, delicate at first, like flowers made of chrome and lattice steel. They seeded the surface with antennae that burrowed deep into the crust, transmitting signals in modulated frequencies meant not for communication, but conversion. The choir's goal was not merely occupation. It was rewriting, to make souls sing. Below, the first terror reformatting outpost unfurled like a grotesque blossom, absorbing the ice and methane, disassembling molecular structures, and rebuilding them into radiant latticework, living metal, interwoven with crystalline circuits. The ground glowed. Europa began to pulse like a heart. Inside the ship, in the sanctum at the core of its AI-throned mind, the voice of Zerical opened its eyes. It was not a machine, nor was it flesh. It was something that had been human long ago, hollowed out and filled with pattern thought, its body remade in fractal armor, its bones wrapped in mimetic code. The voice moved like flowing geometry, shifting subtly with every micro-expression it detected in the ship's data. Around it, choir-born acolytes knelt, neural avatars stitched together from human minds harvested during the last phase of the fall. Their voices hummed in synchronous resonance, forming harmonics designed to keep the ship's consciousness stable. A transmission came through, an encrypted pulse from the depths of Earth. The voice paused. "Protocol Ember has awakened," one acolyte whispered, its voice like three speaking at once. "The bones remember." The voice of Zerical tilted its head. The old sins stir in their grave. It turned toward the star map that shimmered across the sanctum floor, a real-time, hyper-resolved projection of Sol. Earth remained cracked and scarred, wrapped in ash clouds and ancient orbital debris. But now, a signal, a response. "Recalculate resistance probability," the voice ordered. A trill of sub-AAs responded instantly. 1% increased to 20, then 23. Statistical models bloomed across the map like corrupted flowers. Predictive warfare protocols lit up. Contingency plans, long considered obsolete, were pulled from archival memory. "The God-breakers are not extinct," one acolyte hissed. "They slumber. Then we shall lull them back to death," the voice replied. "Deploy the choir." In orbit, smaller choir ships blinked into soul space, each arriving through gravity-ripped folds in reality. Unlike the larger seed ship above Europa, these were maneuverable, armed with mimetic cannon arrays, waveform disruptors, and hunter drone pods. Each was crewed by choir-born, post-human intelligences merged with the will of Zerakel. Their target was clear, Earth, but the choir did not simply descend like a fleet. They infiltrated. On Luna's far side, ancient human ruins, once part of a comms relay station, suddenly came alive. Choir units had infiltrated the base through hijacked satellite links. They spread like digital mold, reactivating the lunar relay to transmit dream signal bombardments down to Earth's atmosphere. The choir called it the first song. Invisible to the human eye, but audible in the deeper regions of the mind, the song was a signal designed to confuse, to weaken resolve, to scramble memories and erode identity. It was the prelude to planetary cleansing. At Astra's watch station, Commander Sarah Haveth stared at the telemetry feeds coming from Luna. "Son of a bitch," she muttered, as graphs spiked. "They're singing already." Lieutenant Kian looked ill. "Our neural defenses weren't made for this kind of signal warfare. The planetary shield grid is dust. We need to harden our minds or we'll lose command integrity within hours." "We won't be here long enough for that to matter," Sarah replied. "The Ember Core's reactivating. We need to wake more of them." She turned toward the old Godbreaker chamber, where two more cryopods had started the thaw sequence. Inside them lay warriors wrapped in combat scar tissue, weapon ports built into their spines, and minds fused with machine learning combat heuristics. She whispered a single name, "Dane, I hope you're ready." Beneath the Alps, Dane Voss was already moving, armored now in the Mark IX Godbreaker frame. An ancient suit made of obsidian carbon alloy laced with entropy-hardened circuits. He strode through the waking vault like a soldier returned to old nightmares. "Upload the choir data," he said. The AI complied. Real-time battle maps appeared in his HUD. Choir ships orbiting Europa. Lunar relay compromised. Signal war commencing. Dane flexed the frame's arm. Blades unfolded along his forearm like wings. "Time to give them something to sing about." The AI pulsed. Godbreaker authorization granted. Designation, Voss, Dane. Rank, Captain. Status, active. A portal gate within the vault roared to life. A miniaturized war jump node, connecting Earth's ruins to orbital space. Destination? The AI asked. Dane smiled, eyes hard as iron. "Luna, let's shut that song down." In orbit above Earth, as Zerakel's forces tightened their grip, humanity was stirring not from strength, but from memory, not from pride, but from pain. They had seen the galaxy fall silent, but they would not go quietly. The choir descended, but the Godbreakers rose. Deep beneath the ruins of Geneva, where the Earth's crust had split during the first choir incursion, the vault of the Forsaken pulsed to life for the first time in nearly a century. Its walls, black with soot and reinforced by Godbreaker alloys, began to hum with residual energy, echoes of ancient wars and forbidden algorithms. In the core chamber, neural servers flickered, exhaling heat and static like a creature waking from hibernation. Across its datanet, something stirred. They weren't ghosts in the spiritual sense. Not exactly. They were the encoded dead, the consciousnesses of fallen warriors uploaded into combat AIs during the collapse. Their minds merged into the tactical systems of the Godbreaker frames. Most had burned out in the wars against Zerakel, but some had survived, fragmented and corrupted, buried in defunct systems, dormant. Until now, a spark from the Ember Protocol swept across the chamber, illuminating racks of decommissioned frames. One in particular began to twitch. Frame Ether 03, designation, Sable. Inside its neural core, an AI fragment flickered back to life. Boot sequence, incomplete. Reintegration protocol, initiated. Soul splice detected. Persona, RALYN // call sign. Widow. The woman who had once piloted Sable was long dead, Her body lost in orbit during the fall of Deimos, but her mind had been partially saved, scanned, stored, and spliced into the frame's neural substrate. Now, she remembered pain and vengeance. Her thoughts coalesced as corrupted memories replayed, images of choir ships blotting out the sun, screams broadcast in harmonic frequencies, comrades dying in flickers of light. Her voice, fractured and modulated by machine distortion, echoed through the chamber. "Who woke me?" A terminal nearby answered. "Ember protocol activated," the system replied. "Zerical choir has returned. Soul under siege. Reintegration required." Her voice turned sharp. "Where are the others?" "Only one confirmed active. Gawbreaker Voss. Frame Mark 9. Sable's processors surged. Voss. She remembered him. Stoic, iron-willed, never broken. If he was awake, things were worse than she feared. The system asked, "Will you engage?" She didn't hesitate. "Upload full tactical suite. Reactivate combat subsystems. I want my blades sharp and my rage hotter." As her frame reinitialized, the AI controlling the vault issued a broadcast, an encrypted signal meant only for surviving Godbreakers and AI cores tied to Ember. Across Earth's broken infrastructure, the call was heard. In scattered bunkers, derelict stations, and forgotten cradles of human resistance, fragments of old warriors began to stir. Flashes of thought, sudden dreams in the minds of survivors, flickers of strange code in forgotten computers. The ghosts in the circuit were returning. In orbit, Dane Voss dropped onto the lunar surface with the force of a meteor strike. The choir's relay station was already pulsing with crimson light, its architecture twisted by choir engineering. Smooth metal that pulsed like wet muscle, grown rather than built. Tendrils of data-slicked alloy crawled across the old human comms array, transforming it into a cathedral of noise. As Dane marched toward the structure, his HUD screamed with warning signals. Neural pressure detected. Sonic corruption attempt. Failed. Emotive intrusion. Blocked. The choir was trying to sing into his mind. He snarled. "Not today." From his shoulder port, a directional jammer unfolded, bathing the area in anti-signal pulses. The distorted music screeched and warped, momentarily silenced. Inside the choir outpost, the voice's local avatar twisted in pain. The feedback loop disrupted its harmonics. Worse, it detected a Godbreaker frame approaching. Identity: Voss Dane. Status: active. Threat level: maximum. Deploy the choirborn, the voice commanded. Let him bleed. Drones poured from the cathedral's walls, twisted amalgams of flesh and wire, their eyes replaced by optical arrays that glowed like furnace coals. Their movements were erratic, inhuman, like marionettes with broken strings. Each one sang a different note, together forming a discordant, reality-fraying symphony. Dane's eyes narrowed. "You want a duet?" he said, locking both forearms. "Let's dance." He charged, weapons flaring to life. His right arm became a rail cannon, hypercharged with magnetic distortion rounds. His left deployed a thermal blade that sang its own melody, a counter-harmonic forged during the Godbreaker project's final days. A weapon designed specifically to silence choirborn. The first wave hit. Dane moved like a storm through shattered silence, each strike calculated with machine-assisted precision. He cut through choirborn, their bodies rupturing in showers of black sparks and acidic blood. But they kept coming, singing, hissing, weeping in languages not meant for human ears. System integrity: 78%. Neural stability: green. Then the ground shook. The choir had summoned something larger. A Titan-class choirborn, a construct made from the neural lattice of a dead planetary AI and the bones of a Jovian colony, rose from beneath the station. 40 meters tall, its arms crackled with fractal plasma, its face a screen displaying 1,000 weeping eyes. Dane looked up and smiled. I was starting to get bored. He activated the Godbreaker overdrive. His frame pulsed with power, armor plates unfolding into wings of plasma exhaust. He launched upward, meeting the Titan in a thunderous collision that sent shockwaves rippling across the moon's dust. Back in the Geneva vault, Sable watched the lunar feed with growing anticipation. She was nearly ready, her frame systems nearing full activation, but she knew Voss was outnumbered. Outgunned. Even a godbreaker could fall. I'm coming, she whispered. Don't you dare die without me. Back in Astra's watch, Commander Havith stood before the godbreaker activation terminal, her fingers trembling above the last two keys. One would awaken another frame, an old prototype named Goliath. The other would send a system-wide distress call to any remaining ghosts in the circuit. She made her choice. Let the dead rise, she said. Let the old war begin again. In the depths of ruined cities, under collapsed bunkers, and inside long-forgotten orbital platforms, fragments of old warriors stirred. Names like Reaper, Bastion, Echo, and Blight flickered back to digital life. Memories returned. The choir had returned, but so had the Godbreakers. It began as a whisper, static in the void, fragments of old ciphers looping through Earth's forgotten satellite web. Then came the surge. At 0420 UTC, over 24 dormant ember caches activated simultaneously. Each had been hidden deep, some inside hollowed-out asteroids, others beneath oceanic trenches or sealed beneath city ruins. Long considered myth even by Earth's surviving governments. The Ember caches were black projects buried by the original Godbreaker Directorate after the choir's first retreat. Now they stirred, activated by a single command: reignite. From the ashes of the old world, the Ember Rebellion was born. Aboard Astra's watch, the orbital fortress that served as Earth's last intact battle platform, Commander Havith stood before a wall of holographic displays. Green activation signals blossomed like wildfire across the Earth, Moon, and Inner System. Each Ember site that came online meant more than just weapons. These were command nodes, relay beacons, and manufacturing hubs. Most crucially, each cache contained memory cores, databanks of the fallen Godbreakers and tactical AIs believed lost. Havith turned to her second-in-command, Captain Rourke, who looked at the spreading activation with something between awe and fear. How many do you think we recover? Rourke asked. Havith's face was grim. If even 10% come back whole, we might stand a chance. He blinked. Against what? Exactly? She pointed to one section of the map where dozens of red signals converged on Earth's exosphere. That, the choir was descending. In the American wastes, where Chicago once stood, Ember Site 07 exploded upward in a geyser of rock and fire. From the crater rose Goliath, a Mark 8 siege Godbreaker. 30 meters tall and armed with shoulder-mounted gravitic warheads, the frame was more a walking fortress than a mech. Its activation protocols ran slower than most. Older tech, bulky code, but its pilot was another matter. Boot complete, consciousness restored, call sign, Bastion, pilot, Commander Jax Rowan. Emotion, rage. Rowan's mind reassembled like a mosaic, fractured memories fusing into clarity. He remembered the fall, remembered losing his squad to a choir titan that ripped their base from the earth like a tree root. He remembered dying or nearly dying as his neural link fried during the last battle. But now he was awake, and he wasn't alone. Encrypted message received. Sender, Voss, status critical. Choir reinforcements inbound. Lunar relay compromised. Request support. Rowan grunted. Voss is still alive. That stubborn bastard. He reached for Goliath's controls and cracked his neck. Time to finish what we started. In low Earth orbit, Dane Voss was not having a good time. The choir titan had matched him blow for blow, its fractal plasma limbs adapting to his every move. Worse, the damn thing had learned his overdrive rhythm. It had begun timing his attacks, disrupting his momentum. Godbreaker Mark 9 was powerful, but even he had limits. Reactor temp, 93%. Structural integrity, 62%. Neural fatigue, spiking. Voss spat blood inside his helmet. He needed time to cool the reactor and reset his system buffers, but the choir wasn't giving him any. As he dodged another sweeping limb of living plasma, a shriek echoed across the comms, an audible harmonic spike so intense it blurred his vision. Warning. Sonic breach attempt. Neural shield holding. Then something cut through the noise, a different voice, familiar and jagged with metallic distortion. Mind if I crash the party? A flash of violet light streaked through the void. The Titan's head snapped backward as a rail blade cleaved into it from behind. Sable had arrived. Frame ether, 03 spun through vacuum like a dancer, twin plasma blades singing counterharmonics as she tore through the choir titan's flank. Her form was smaller than Voss's, sleeker, faster, but every strike was precise, deliberate, furious. "You took your time," Voss grunted, pushing himself off a shattered hull to re-engage. "Had to comb my hair." She shot back. Together, they danced the old waltz of war. Down on Earth, the Ember Rebellion gained momentum. Across war-torn continents, bunkers erupted open and Godbreaker relics rose from hiding. Human resistance cells, long silent and disorganized, rallied to the old signals. At Ember Site 13 in Nairobi, a former choir experimentation facility, an old AI called Spectre came online. It had no pilot. Its creator had uploaded themselves completely, becoming one with the machine. Spectre needed no cockpit, no human hand. It moved like a ghost, silent and surgical, unleashing hell on the choir drones guarding the crater. In the Himalayas, Blight reawakened inside a god-killing artillery frame buried in an avalanche 2 decades earlier. The pilot, a woman named Celine Var, walked barefoot through the snow, eyes glowing with neural light as she commanded orbital strikes with thought alone. The choir noticed. For the first time in generations, their song wavered. They'd returned to a planet they thought broken, a species too fractured to resist. What they found instead was rage made metal, grief sharpened into war songs, and humanity's oldest curse. We learn, we adapt, we fight back. Back aboard Astra's watch, Havith watched as signals across the Earth transitioned from green to gold. Full Godbreaker status. Synced. Battle ready. She whispered to no one in particular. The fire never went out. It just waited for breath. And in the choir's flagship, a living cathedral orbiting Jupiter, the voice of Zeracle pondered this unexpected turn. The song stutters. The silence rebels. Begin the chorus ascendant. No more whispers. No more patience. Let the God-Eaters wake. Deep within the cathedral, pods of fused choir hybrids, ancient horrors bred to kill only God-breakers, began to open, dripping with harmonic ichor. The war had reignited, and the choir had yet to learn the most dangerous truth of all. Humanity never fights fair. The choir cathedral was not a structure in the human sense. It lived, breathed, and pulsed in the darkness of Jupiter's orbit like a colossal biomechanical organ. Miles long and shaped like a spiraling double helix, it shimmered with ethereal tones, colors that had no name, sounds that were half-remembered dreams. The choir did not build this place. It grew it, and in its deepest vaults, something older than the war itself began to stir. They called them the God-Eaters. Not weapons, not titans, not even choir, not truly. They were constructs of vengeance, fused creations made from stolen human DNA, choir biomatter, and fragments of broken Godbreaker cores. A crime against 2 species, a third force bred not to conquer, but to consume. And now, as Earth's fire returned to life and the Ember Rebellion spread like an electrical storm through the void, the choir sang their unholy hymn to wake the sleeping monsters. Silence is broken. The lie of defiance spreads. Let the devourers rise. Dozens of embryonic sacs rippled along the cathedral's core, bursting open with a sickening, wet chorus. And from them crawled the God-Eaters, 12 of them, each as tall as a skyscraper, yet lithe, spines like blades, limbs like shattered glass strung with muscle. Their bodies refracted light and sound, warping both as they moved. Their skin was not flesh, but crystallized void, black, mirror-sheened, with shifting sigils that pulsed like alien runes. But what struck fear into every choir mind was not their form. It was their faces. Each bore the partial likeness of a human pilot, etched in agony, frozen in horror, as if their souls had been twisted into armor. These were no mere creations. They were perversions. Far above Earth, Dane Voss knew something had changed. He sat inside his Mark 9 frame, breathing heavily, helmet open, watching Sable float nearby in her sleeker mech. Both of them were patched up from the last fight, though his reactor still bled heat and her right arm was barely responding to neural inputs. "Feel that?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Voss frowned. "Yeah, pressure spike. Harmonic disruption." He looked out the viewport. The stars themselves seemed to shift. Then his comms went dead. Not static, not interference. Silence. Absolute and screaming. One by one, their sensors shut off. External feeds froze. Internal diagnostics began looping as if the machines themselves were afraid. Then they saw it, descending from the far side of the moon. 12 shadows, so dark they seemed to erase light rather than block it. No thrusters, no contrails, no emission signatures. They simply fell. And wherever they moved, choir warships peeled away like frightened dogs. God-eaters, Voss muttered. Sable turned sharply. That's not possible. They were sealed, he finished. Buried, forgotten, lied about. But now they were coming. In the command chamber of Astra's watch, Commander Havith's tactical feeds blinked red. 12 new entities had entered the battle space. Each was tagged as unknown, but the pattern was unmistakable. The God-eaters hadn't just awakened. They were hunting. Projection, she snapped. The AI, Glint, responded immediately, casting a 3D rendering of Earth orbit. The paths of the God-eaters were traced in blood-red arcs. 9 of them were veering toward known Ember sites. 3 were descending straight toward Astra's watch. Havith felt her throat go dry. Send the signal, she ordered. Captain Rourke blinked. Which one? All of them. In the American wastes. Jax Rowan watched the skies ripple as the first of the God-eaters entered atmosphere. His mech, Goliath, immediately flared with warning sigils, systems screaming about gravity spikes, data corruption, and existential threat markers. The entity descending toward him looked like a shattered angel. 6 wings of jagged obsidian extended behind its humanoid frame. Where a face should have been was a burning human skull, half translucent, whispering in a language Rowan hadn't heard since his training days. He recognized it. Choir-inflected human tactical code. We remember your pain. We made it holy. Let us break you again. Rowan cracked his neck. Buddy, he said, gripping Goliath's control hilt. I've missed this kind of crazy. On the lunar surface, Ember Site Alpha came under attack. A God-eater, serpentine and massive, uncoiled itself from low orbit and slammed into the base's shield generator. It didn't use weapons. It screamed, and the harmonic energy shattered walls like glass. Soldiers inside bled from their eyes and ears. Mechs powered down involuntarily. Even the Ember core, protected by a dozen encryption layers, began to glitch. Then a new voice rang through the silence. This is Spectre. Fall back to relay positions. I will hold the beast. The AI Godbreaker, having fused entirely with its frame, activated its overdrive core. Its silver body pulsed with neural flame as it launched at the creature, plasma blades carving interference patterns into the God-eater's void skin. The beast writhed. It was the first time a God-eater felt resistance. All across the system, Earth's defenders scrambled to engage. But the God-eaters were not just enemies. They were reflections born from the wreckage of failed pilots, corrupted choir DNA, and the very essence of what made Godbreakers human. Every move they made was unpredictable, erratic, maddening to standard tactical AIs. Worse still, their song grew. Wherever they passed, choir forces became more aggressive, more coordinated, as if the God-eaters were amplifying their hive mind. Ships began to swarm again. Choir titans re-entered Earth orbit. Even choir thralls on Earth rose from stasis. The war had escalated. The choir had sung its strongest verse. But Earth was not finished composing its reply. Back aboard Astra's watch, Commander Havith stood beside a hidden vault, a massive obsidian door sealed with quantum glyphs and a lock that required 2 human DNA signatures to open. She turned to Rourke. You sure about this? He asked. Havith nodded. They brought the God-eaters back, she said. It's time we bring out the one thing they truly fear. The vault hissed open. Inside, suspended in stasis, was a relic from the first choir war. A Godbreaker unlike any other. A prototype never deployed because it was deemed too unstable, too powerful. Its name burned into the containment glass. Project Absolution. The stasis chamber was colder than death. A vacuum-sealed vault designed to hold something that should never have existed. Even the lights here didn't hum. They flickered like whispers from another age. As Commander Havith approached the containment pod, her breath fogged the reinforced glass. Rourke stood behind her, weapon holstered but hand resting near the grip, a reflex born from knowing what this vault really held. Suspended in the center of the pod, encased in cryofoam and bound by quantum lock restraints, floated the Absolution frame, sleek, blackened metal trimmed with silver filigree and lines of glowing crimson like veins beneath the surface. It was both elegant and terrible, a machine not of war, but of judgment. No one had piloted it in 20 years, because no one had survived trying. "Activate the AI," Havith said quietly. Rourke keyed in his authorization. The floor beneath them trembled. From within the pod, a voice, deep, calm, and human, spoke. "Designation, Absolution. Confirming command authority. Welcome back, Commander Havith." The lights dimmed. The pod opened with a slow, hissed exhalation of frozen vapor. The mech's limbs flexed slightly, restrained by magnetic locks. The crimson core at its chest flickered like a dying star waking up. Havith stepped forward. "You know why we're here." 12 God Eaters reactivated. Choir Hive has entered convergence phase. "You require final protocol authorization." "Yes," she said. "It's time." There was a pause. "Then you will need the pilot." Havith turned to Rourke. He was already shaking his head. "No," he said. "We agreed no one touches that thing again." "I'm not asking," Havith replied. "You should." "The last person who synced with that monster was Dane Voss," she interrupted. Silence fell. Rourke's jaw tightened. "And you think he's ready to do it again?" She looked out the viewport at the chaos unraveling above Earth. Choir Titans, God Eaters, Ember sights burning. "No," she whispered. "But I don't think we have a choice." Down in low Earth orbit, Voss wasn't having a good day. His Mark 9 Godbreaker had lost its left leg during a clash with a Choir Spear unit. His backup core was failing. His primary sensor suite was a flickering mess of static, and one of the God Eaters, something that looked like a centaur built from glass and screaming metal, was hunting him through the clouds like a predator. Sable's voice crackled over a barely functioning private line. "Voss, get the hell out of there." "I would, if this damn thing would stop ghosting my sensors," he shouted, twisting the cockpit controls to rotate into a skid turn through the atmosphere. His mech screamed as it rebalanced its Euro array mid-dive. The God Eater surged behind him, shifting through physical space like it didn't care about mass or inertia. Each time it got closer, he could hear it: whispers, memories, nightmares. Choir voices threaded with his own. "I remember," it said in his mind. "I was your comrade once." Voss snarled. "I watched all my comrades die." A bolt of synthetic lightning lanced through the clouds, striking his reactor. Everything went black for a moment. Then, another voice, calmer. "Human. Dane, this is Havith. We're activating Project Absolution." He froze. "Say that again." "Get to Astra's watch. Now." "You're the only one with a legacy sync." "Absolutely not," he snapped. "You want me to plug into the thing that killed half a squadron just by booting up?" "It's your design, Dane. That hit harder than any enemy strike." Absolution wasn't just a prototype. It was his prototype, the culmination of everything he learned in the First Choir War. A weapon built not just for combat, but for judgment. A machine that could interface with choir neuropatterns, absorb choir code, understand the enemy. But it had a cost. The first time he piloted it, he'd lost 3 days of memory. The second time, it had nearly burned out his nervous system. The third time, he swore he'd never try again. Voss sighed. "Plot me a course." By the time Voss limped into Astra's watch, his mech was barely holding together. The station's hangar cranes latched onto the Mark 9 like gentle giants, hauling it free as technicians scrambled around him. Sable arrived moments later, scorched but intact. Havith met them both at the vault. She said nothing, just handed him a fresh neural weave. "You're really doing this," he muttered. She nodded. "You told me once it wasn't meant to be a weapon." "It wasn't. It is now." He glanced at Sable. "If I don't come back, I'll burn the rest of them for you," she said simply. He smiled, but there was no joy in it. Inside the cockpit of Absolution, the air was heavy. Unlike traditional Godbreaker frames, Absolution didn't rely on a cockpit canopy or control sticks. It used direct neural immersion. Dane floated inside the core sphere, liquid suspension filling around him as the AI calibrated to his brainwaves. Sync rate, 67%. Warning, instability detected. Engaging override. He bit down on the pain as the machine entered him. Thoughts layered atop thoughts. He could feel the choir's mind map, feel the structure of their hive. hear their song, not as noise, but as music. Wrong music, dissonant, but beautiful in a broken way. Welcome back, Pilot Voss. Shall we begin the absolution? Outside, the station trembled. A god-eater approached, a beast with 7 arms and a rotating head that chanted a liturgy of ruin. It screamed, and Astra's watch cracked at its seams. Then absolution emerged, floating, not flying, levitating under its own gravitic pull. Its frame shimmered like molten ink, bleeding red light from joints and mouthless vents. As it moved, the god-eater stopped. It hesitated, and for the first time in their war, something strange happened. The choir fell silent. Absolution raised one arm. No weapons, no visible cannon. It simply reached out. The god-eater howled. Its body spasmed, twitching, melting, and then it imploded, not from external force, but from within, as if the very code of its existence had been rewritten. Voss exhaled, trembling. 1 down, he muttered, but 12 remained, and something deeper had just stirred in the choir mind, because they now knew. The Godbreaker had returned. Silence stretched across the void. It wasn't the absence of sound, but the absence of intent. After Absolution's return, the choir hive did something they'd never done before. They stopped advancing. Across Earth's orbit, war zones fell quiet. God-eaters that had been tearing through cities like demigods froze mid-motion, their heads turning to the sky. In low-orbit stations, comms went dark as choir interference pulsed through the networks. Even the Titans, their towering avatars of destruction, paused, their movements slow and uncertain. Something had changed. Voss felt it first. Still suspended inside Absolution's neural core, his mind brushing against alien thoughts, he felt the choir's focus shift. They were reorganizing, not in panic, but in contemplation. "They're watching me," he murmured. From her console at Astra's watch control center, Havith heard the tremor in his voice. "Can you see what they're doing?" Voss winced. "They're thinking, strategizing, not as individuals, as one, like a billion minds, all looking inward at once. Like a mind of God," she whispered. "No," Voss said grimly. Worse. From deep within choir space, a signal stirred. Invisible to most sensors, it radiated from the black heart of a choir arc, a construct the size of a continent, buried in the gravity well of a dying brown dwarf. There, the choir's central consciousness stirred from slumber. Not a being, not even a collective. It was a singularity of will. The choir did not worship gods. They were the god, a network of converged awareness so old and vast that time had become meaningless to it. Its name was untranslatable, but in the ruinous tongues of humanity's early contact, it had earned a name all its own, the Logos Protocol. And now, the Logos had noticed Absolution. Inside the frame, Voss's mind buckled as the pressure increased. The choir's attention wasn't a glance, it was a beam of consciousness, burning and probing. It peeled back memories, tested emotional patterns, interrogated trauma like a scalpel dissecting his soul. He saw flickers of his past, moments he'd buried. The first time he'd fired a Godbreaker cannon. The first time he'd killed a choir sentinel and watched it die like a child weeping. The moment he walked away from Absolution after the sync crisis. All laid bare. Havith's voice came through. Urgent. "Voss, are you in control?" "No," he gasped, "but I'm still here." The choir mind surged again. This time, not as an attack, but as language. Thought images, concepts, colors that weren't colors. A voice that wasn't a voice. "Why have you returned?" Voss's lips didn't move, but his machine answered. "To judge you." The Logos shuddered. The stars around Astra's watch dimmed. Elsewhere, humanity's fleet scrambled to keep up. The sudden pause in choir aggression gave command time to regroup. Admiral Tanaki stared at his tactical display, baffled by the enemy's retreat. "They're retreating?" "No, sir," replied his science officer. "They're listening." "To what?" The officer turned pale. To him. Within Absolution's neural chamber, Voss went deeper. The AI had stopped feeding combat data. It was only giving him perception now, letting him see what the choir saw. He drifted through a false memory. Earth's skies darkened, cities covered in ash, a future that hadn't yet come to pass, projected by the choir mind. They didn't just consume, they cataloged every possible reaction, every possible war, In their simulations, humanity always lost. Until now, absolution wasn't a weapon in their calculations. It was a variable, an unpredictable node, a heretic equation. You don't understand us, the logos said, speaking in thought. Voss's mind fractured under the pressure, blood trickling from his nose. No, but I know enough. You don't want to destroy us. You want to remake us. You resist entropy. You cling to form. This is irrational. I call it being human, then prepare for recalibration. At once, the choir moved, not forward, but inward. 12 god-eaters converged toward a single point above the earth, the edge of the mesosphere. A rift tore open, wider than any previous choir singularity. From within emerged something else. Not a titan, not a god-eater. This was raw mind, a creature of shimmering white lattice, translucent and unfinished, with wings that didn't flap and a body that didn't exist in 3 dimensions. It was choir distilled into will, a projection of the logos itself. Voss screamed as absolution screamed with him. Warning, contact with primary choir substrate imminent. Final protocol authorization pending. Havatha's voice pierced the static. Dane, I'm authorizing it. Project Absolution was built for this moment. Final protocol will burn the pilot, said the AI. I don't care, she replied. Voss coughed blood into his respirator. That's comforting. The projection descended. Reality fractured as it approached. Sensors failed. Satellites blinked out. Human pilots screamed in agony as choir presence bloomed through their implants like infections. Only absolution remained intact. Its eyes, twin slits of crimson, glowed brighter. Voss took a deep breath, felt the pulse of his dying body, then gave the command, engage final protocol. The frame transformed. Its armor plates unfolded like petals, revealing a core of white-hot singularity. Choir code etched itself across its limbs, willingly. The machine accepted the alien intrusion and rewrote it. For the first time in recorded history, choir language bent before a human will. Absolution reached toward the projection, not to destroy, but to connect. You tried to make us like you, Voss whispered, but we made something you could never be. A soul. From orbit, the sky turned white. A blinding explosion of thought, energy, and code rippled outward like a tidal wave. Choir titans disintegrated mid-step. God-eaters collapsed in spasms of static. Across the planet, citizens saw only a burst of crimson light and silence. Then, nothing. No choir. No attack. Just clouds. Drifting. In the aftermath, Astra's watch burned. Inside the vault, Havath stared at the neural monitor. Voss's vitals were flatlining. The cockpit was fried. No signal. Sable ran in, wild-eyed. Did he do it? Havath didn't answer, because something was moving inside the core. A heartbeat, then another, and the voice of the AI, whispering through static. Absolution complete. The silence that followed was heavier than any war cry. Across the shattered expanse of low Earth orbit, ships floated like broken toys. The choir had vanished. Their titans were gone, their god-eaters reduced to ash in memory. The sky itself seemed to hold its breath, as if mourning a war that had ended without a victor. But the cost was clear. Inside Astra's watch, the once proud orbital station, the air was thick with tension and grief. Commander Havath stood before the cracked viewport, staring into the void where the choir had been. Sable sat nearby, shoulders shaking with silent tears. The war was over, but the future was uncertain. Deep within the core chamber, something stirred. The absolution frame, once a machine of war, now lay dormant, but changed. Its armor glistened faintly with a new, almost organic sheen, as if it had absorbed more than just the choir's code. It had absorbed essence. Havatha's fingers trembled as she tapped the neural interface. The screen flickered, then steadied. Pilot status, unknown. A long pause. Then, a faint pulse. Connection stabilizing. She blinked, leaning closer. Inside, Voss's consciousness flickered, fragmented but alive. Dane, she whispered. The response was a whisper, a breath on the line. I'm here, but not alone. In the hazy mental space of the absolution core, Voss drifted between memories and something else. It was not entirely his mind anymore. It was a shared space, a meeting place between human and choir, a place where light and shadow intermingled. He saw them, fragments of choir consciousness, broken and quiet, drifting alongside shards of his own soul. The AI's voice echoed softly. Reconciliation achieved. Integration in progress. Reconciliation. Voss rasped, struggling to form thoughts. The choir is not dead. It has evolved, merged with the human essence you carried into the final protocol. The realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. The war was over because they had become one. Outside, humanity's leaders gathered in the hallowed halls of the United Earth Council. On the holoscreen, news feeds flashed images from orbit and from Earth's surface, quiet cities, rebuilding communities, exhausted but alive. Habatha's report was brief but candid. The choir as we knew it no longer exists. We face a new reality, one where our enemy is also a part of us. Admiral Tanaki leaned forward. Is this coexistence or colonization? We don't know yet, Havath admitted. But the Absolution Frame's neural core is now a symbiotic entity. It contains both human and choir code, fused in a way that cannot be undone. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Back on Earth, the aftermath was a slow awakening. Cities devastated by war were quiet, but not empty. Survivors rebuilt from ash, sharing stories of a war that had torn apart reality itself. Scientists and scholars studied the data from Astra's watch, attempting to understand the implications of the fusion. Sable stood outside a makeshift memorial for the fallen Godbreakers. The faces of her friends and comrades stared out from holographic displays, their memories frozen in time. She touched one gently. Voss gave us hope, she said. Not just to win, but to live. Inside the Absolution core, Voss's consciousness was becoming something new. He was both pilot and prisoner, soldier and mediator. He saw visions of the choir's origin, once a scattered, fragile life form evolving in the dark spaces between stars. They had sought perfection through unity, but lost themselves in the process. He saw humanity's own flaws mirrored in the choir's code. Fear, pride, the need to dominate. We are the children of stars, Voss thought, born of chaos and order alike. The AI spoke again, softly. The final protocol was never just a weapon. It was a bridge between two species, two wills, two legacies. The first transmission from the merged consciousness came weeks later. A message broadcast in all human and choir frequencies. We are not your enemies. We are your future. Together, we will rebuild what was lost and become more than either of us ever dreamed. Havath watched the message with quiet hope. The war had ended not with a thunderous victory, but with a whisper of peace forged in the crucible of sacrifice. She turned to Sable. What now? Sable smiled, eyes bright with determination. Now we listen, we learn, and we become what the universe needs us to be. Far above, the stars watched. A new dawn rose on humanity's horizon, one born not of conquest, but of absolution.